even give you some idea, clarifies what you're what you're doing and what you're thinking, and then hopefully this will help you guys have a better understanding of it, and maybe even give you some idea or concept of how to share it, or maybe you can just share this video with people afterwards. So I said, hey man, I'm working with this company. It's called Sonana. He doesn't know a lot about crypto, but he understands crypto, right? But he doesn't know a ton about it, but he does know what crypto is, and he knows that there's a lot going on, and he knows a lot of people are making money. He also knows a lot of people are losing money, so it actually made sense for Sonana, right? And I said, here's the cool thing, just to start off, I wrote this down, it stands for Shiny Object Syndrome and Nothing Accomplished, which he thought was hysterical. Right? He was like, okay, so that's kind of unique. He said, but yeah, I bet you a lot of people vibe with that. And I was like, absolutely. And I drew a bunch of arrows because this was not the first time I did this. And I said, so here's what it is, right? I said, Sonana has this really cool, excited, and committed community. So I wrote community down on the page. And I said, they got this really cool, committed, and excited community. And the reason why these guys are committed and excited, now you're going to think this is funny when I first say it, because before I tell you the next thing, but the reason why they're really excited is because every time they buy Sonana tokens, they sell Sonana tokens, they transfer Sonana tokens, they're charged the 3% tax. And I always hesitate because I know that makes no sense to anyone, that someone will be excited about that. And it's kind of like, I said, yeah, kind of crazy, right? They're kind of crazy, right? He's like, yeah. What's the catch? I said, well, I'm not going to talk about what happens to all, because it's not germane to this conversation. I just want to get to the hot feature, because I think this is the coolest thing that I've ever seen and ever been a part of. I said, so here's the deal, man. It's 3%, but 1%, right? So 1/3 of that is going into this thing called a degen voter wallet. I said, it's a digital wallet. He said, yeah, I know what it is. I said, great. So it's going to this degen voter wallet. I said, and here's how this works, man. Just kind of picture this. I said, everybody who's holding $500 of Sonana or more, they're going to get, every 2 weeks we run this process, they're going to be able to nominate tokens, right? We're on a Solana network, so it's going to be a token project from the Solana network, and they get to look at that, study it, find the very best project that they can find. It's normally going to be an up-and-coming project, something that they think is hot, they love what it does, or they know the team behind it, or blah, 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 a whole bunch of different features, how they evaluate, but then they're going to come and nominate this, and they want to pick the best project that they can because they want to win, okay? And as long as you have $500 worth of, you're holding this in your wallet or more, you're in position to nominate, okay? And we're going to take 25 nominations, at least in the beginning. We might change that later, but in the beginning, we'll take up to 25 nominations. He said, okay, got it. I said, now, anybody who's holding $50 or more of Sonana, they get to vote. Right, and I said it's a locked, closed system. Right, we don't know what's going on. We can't put our fingers on the scale or anything. It's all being done through this DApp. I don't know if you know what that is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's a secure, closed system. Nobody can see who anybody else is voting for. So they're literally they're looking at these 25 projects, and they're trying to figure out, in their estimation, from their research, which one is the best, so that they can hopefully pick the project that the most amount of people pick, so they can win. Because winning is cool. And now here's where it gets interesting. And he said, you ready? He said, yeah, I'm ready. I said, okay, great. I said on Monday, so this is a 2-week process, so we come finally to what we're going to call Degen Voter Monday, right? Because it's going to be exciting. Because at 7 o'clock p.m., on that Monday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, because we got people from all over the world, we're going to actually release to every single person in the entire community who has $50, who's holding $50 Sonana or more, they're all going to be able to see whether they voted or not. Hopefully they voted because they wanted to win the vote, but whether they voted or not, we're going to tell them, hey, here's the winner, right, of the thing, right? Here's the winner, and here's how that gets exciting. I said, because let's say it was XYZ token that won. I don't know why, by the way, guys, just aside, I don't know why I always say XYZ token. I don't know, I made it up one time and it just made sense. Eventually there'll actually probably be an XYZ token, I guess. I don't know, but I always just say XYZ token. So let's say it was XYZ token that won, right? And I said, and let's say that our DGen voter wallet has accumulated over that 2 weeks $100,000. Here's what we're going to do, right? And this is why people are trying to do the best job they can do nominating and the best job they can do voting, because here's what's going to happen. We're letting everybody know at 7 o'clock, right, who the winner is, how much money is in that DGen voter wallet, and then we're letting them know that what we're going to do for the winners is at 8 o'clock, we're going to buy $100,000. We're going to liquidate this wallet, right? Whatever's in there, 100,000, 10,000, a million, whatever's in there, we're going to liquidate this wallet and buy the winning token. So in this case, we would buy $100,000 of XYZ token, and we will split it evenly among the winners. So, quick math will tell you if there were 100 people that voted for the right project and we have 100 winners, we buy $100,000 worth of XYZ token. We give each one of them $1,000 of XYZ token. And he was like, I said, do you understand that? He was like, yeah, I understand it. I said, excellent. Is that not the coolest thing you've ever heard of? He said, well, I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's cool. So you're saying that every 2 weeks, right? People have the opportunity to pick a project and they can win. And they only need the whole $50, and what they win could be far more than the $50. I said yes, and he said, yeah, it's cool. I don't know if it's the coolest thing I've ever heard of. But I'm happy for you, man, that you're excited about it. And I said, you don't get it, do you? He said, what are you talking about? I said, okay, let me ask you a question. What do you think's going to happen to the price of XYZ token when we buy $100,000 of it? And he said, it's going to go up. And I said, we can't make guarantees, but I think most people would agree with you. He said, no, it's going to go up. And I said, okay, you're the authority, okay, it's going to go up. I said, great. So you answered that first question, okay, so $100,000 purchase of XYZ token, you believe it's going to go up. He said, it's definitely going to go up. I said, okay, great. Second question. Seems like a trick question, but it's not. How much time exists between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock? So 7 o'clock, when we told you what we were going to do, and 8 o'clock when we actually do it. And he looks at me, and he says, holy crap. Now, being fair, he didn't say crap. But, I'm going to be cool for the thing. We're going to go with holy crap. And I said, now you're getting it. I said, because between 7:01 and 7:59, what are you very likely to do? He said, I'm going to buy some XYZ token. I said, yeah, you are, aren't you? And I said, how much are you going to buy? He said, you know me, bro. I'll probably go in for a couple of grand, man. Maybe more. He was like, holy crap. Again, didn't say crap, but we're going to go with crap. And I said, now you got it. He said, how many people know about this? I said, well, listen, the community, I just told you, right? The community is going to, anybody who had $50 or more is all going to have the ability to know about this at 7 o'clock. I said, so let's think about this for a second, because you think most people would agree with you that if they knew that a $100,000 purchase was going to happen, that in all likelihood the price, just like you said, would probably go up. Can't guarantee it, right? But that's probably what's going to happen. He said, of course they would. Of course they would. And I said, okay. So you're excited about this $100,000 purchase? And he said, yeah. And I said, you were saying you would probably buy a couple $1,000, hoping to get a big price bump and be able to make some profits. He said, yeah. I said, so let's say that we had 10,000 people in the community that knew about this. And let's say none of them are ballers like you who are just going to throw thousands of dollars. Let's say that on average, maybe some of them throw a little, hundreds, and some of them throw, tens of dollars, whatever. But let's just say on average, those 10,000 people put in $100 each of buying XYZ token between 7:01 and 7:59. I said, do you realize that's $1 million? and his eyes got big. And I said, if you think 100,000 at 8 o'clock is gonna take the price up, what do you think $1 million between 7:01 and 7:59 is gonna do to the price? You guys already know what he said, right? You know what he said. Yes, he said it again. And I said, man, now, if $1 million in this example went in between 7:01 and 7:59, do you believe that other people that are currently a part of the crypto world, who don't know anything about Sonana, anything about XYZ token, but all of a sudden see XYZ token pop up on their trending category, XYZ token has increased 3,000% in the last 15 minutes. Do you think some of them are going to be fear of loss and they're going to jump in too? He's like, oh man, we are going to be rich. That's exactly what he said. We are going to be rich. And I said, that is the plan. That is the plan.